The City Council voted to add zoning restrictions for gun stores to open in Newton. Here's more on their decision. City Council passed the firearm zoning ordinance last Wednesday evening. The ordinance passed with 23 votes and 1 abstain. The council held a special council meeting to discuss the final version of the document. The updated zoning mandates that any potential firearm business seeking to locate in Newton apply for a special permit from City Council. The permit would then require a 2/3 majority vote of the council, 16 out of 24 councilors, to receive approval. The council met on Zoom to discuss 8 proposed amendments from Councilman Baker and Councilwoman Norton. After debating, 3 proposed amendments passed, 2 were withdrawn, and 3 failed. The first 3 amendments proposed by Councilman Baker passed unanimously at the beginning of the meeting. Amendment 1 writes that children ages 14 to 18 must enter the gun store with a parent or guardian. Amendment 2 states that firearm stores 1,000 feet outside of city boundaries can be included in the Newton buffer zones. Amendment 3 writes that site analysis of community impacts will include communities outside of city boundaries. Amendments 4 and 5, also proposed by Councilman Baker, were much more controversial. Amendment 4 states that firearm business uses shall not be located within 1,000 feet of any daycare center, preschool, childcare facility, college or university, public land intended for passive or active recreation, playground, land or structures used for religious purposes, library, nursing home, or an existing firearm dealer or firing range at another location. The amendment changes the word park to land, making the buffer zones much more ambiguous. Amendment 5 clarifies the buffer zones further to include recreational locations outside city boundaries. This means that playgrounds or schools just outside of city borders can contribute to the 1,000-foot buffer zone restrictions. Together, Amendments 4 and 5 would make zoning so restrictive that there would be no viable land left for a gun store to operate. Those in support of the amendments, and the more restrictive buffer zones that would come as a result of them, made well-backed, compelling arguments.
Another location is the Children's Chartered Trauma Clinic, and I would like to read out loud the email that we got from the director today. My name is Paula Stahl. I'm the founder and director of Children's Chartered Trauma Clinic, opening in 1985. We are the largest provider of specialized psychological trauma services in Massachusetts. We have been located at 77 Rumford Ave in Waltham for the past 36 years. The children and adults we serve present with significant, often acute histories of domestic violence, sexual abuse, and physical and emotional abuse. We see over 325 adults and children weekly, 70% who live in the Newton and Waltham communities. I have serious concerns about clients in desperate need of our services with histories of violence, feeling safe to access our mental health services with a gun store 1 block from our clinic. I worry about the children who have witnessed violence, making sense of a gun store near the clinic their parents bring them to heal. I also have grave concerns for our clients and a 40-member staff. Some of our clients are stalked by their perpetrators. It is frightening to think their perpetrators would have access to guns so close to our parking lot and our entrance. I ask the council to consider the unique needs of our clients and our responsibility as a community to allow these adults and children to heal in a safe and protected environment. In my 40-year career of advocating for abused children and adults, I have never been faced with a decision by the leaders of a community that has a greater potential to compromise the work and the mission of my clinic. So here's my issue with our approach. It would literally be written into the law that these are the locations that the elected leaders of Newton say it's okay to cite a gun store.
Even with compelling arguments, Amendments 4 and 5 did not pass. Multiple council members had too many unanswered questions. Without time to understand the material fully, they were not confident in their votes.
The idea that we should be rushing last-minute amendments or amendments that are so complicated that to deliberate them fairly, we need a lot more time.
Even though the final 2 amendments proposed by Baker did not pass, the council can add amendments to the ordinance at any given time. Baker and the other council members can still revisit them. Councilwoman Norton proposed 3 other amendments to the ordinance similarly, with varying degrees of success. Of her 3 proposed amendments, 1 failed and 2 were withdrawn. Amendments 1 and 3 were withdrawn before being moved to a vote. Norton's Amendment 1 restricts firing ranges in all city zones, and Amendment 3 requires that City Council perform a background check on any potential gun store owners. Again, council members had too many unanswered questions and not enough time with the material to properly vote. The amendments were also too complicated and needed to be finalized further. Norton's Second Amendment sought to disallow children under the age of 18 from entering a gun store in the city of Newton at all. City Council members pushed back against this amendment, citing how it is a violation of the constitutional rights of children ages 14 to 18, and that a motion of this gravity is outside the scope of City Council. This amendment failed to pass. Council members were adamant about passing some form of the ordinance on Wednesday night.
We need to pass something this evening. And despite Councilor Gentile's concerns, stating that we have more time, right now we have a gun shop that's ready to open any day now. And I would like to make sure we have something in place before that happens.
They ended up passing the original zoning mandates with Baker's first 3 amendments. Before last night's vote, and prior to this restrictive zoning, a gun store could have opened in Newton on any one of 777 parcels of land without approval from the City Council. The zoning amendment officially will become effective in 13 days, but it will apply retroactively to any uses that have not received a building permit by April 23, 2021, the publication date of the first notice of a public hearing. The mayor herself signed the updated zoning ordinance into effect the very next day, on June 3rd. In her briefing, she voiced her emphatic support and commended City Council members on noticing and docketing the effective amendment quickly. Now the committee will move on to discussing a ban on firearm sales in the city of Newton. Council will hold a public hearing on June 21st to discuss. The ban on firearm sales would prevent any gun store from opening in the city of Newton. Keep in mind that a ban on firearm sales is not the same thing as a ban on firearm ownership. Residents of Newton are still legally allowed to own a gun. Retail stores would not be allowed to sell them within city boundaries. The underlying controversy here is the potential of infringing on residents' Second Amendment rights. The city's law department currently takes the stance that a complete ban would likely be held unconstitutional in a court of law. However, other legal professionals are arguing the opposite, that a ban on sales would not be an infringement on the Second Amendment, which only protects the right to ownership. In her briefing, Mayor Fuller cited implication of the Second Amendment and the current legal landscape as a potential roadblock to a ban. Council will have to decide whether or not a ban is important to the city of Newton. Depending on the content of the ban itself, the city will also have to determine how complex the legal ramifications might be and if that is a fight they are willing to